The fence was 10 feet high, the bike doing 55 miles an hour. The stunt crew tried 3 times, failed 3 times. McQueen stepped up. Nobody could stop him. John Wayne watched, didn't say a word. Then he turned around and said just 3 words. Bavaria, Germany. Bavaria, Germany. The Filzmoser Meadows. Morning fog just beginning to lift. Dead center of the Great Escape set. Cameras, cranes, generators, vehicles, hundreds of people, hundreds of pieces of equipment, and 1 motorcycle, 1 ramp, 1 fence. Carey Loftin, the most in-demand stunt coordinator in Hollywood. 22 years, over 200 films, Rebel Without a Cause, The Wild One, North by Northwest. He was on all of them. On set, his word was final. He calculated the risk. Who jumps, who doesn't. That call was his. And that morning, before he'd even finished his coffee, Loftin had made a decision. McQueen can't do this scene. Loftin had reasons. Concrete, numerical, non-negotiable reasons. First, the ramp was short. The angle steep. A miscalculation here wasn't forgivable. Second, the bike was slipping in the Bavarian mud. Traction was unpredictable. No margin. Third, the fence was real. Not a prop. The barbed wire was real. Pulled tight. And fourth, the most important, McQueen was an actor. A great actor. Maybe the best of his generation. Scene instinct, control, presence in front of a camera. Nobody touched him there. But actors don't do stunts. There was a reason for that rule. Loftin knew the reason because he'd lived it. In 1948, on a set accident caused by a scene that wasn't properly prepared, he'd lost 3 friends. Since that day, the rule had never changed. Actors stay behind the line. McQueen had arrived early that morning, before his call time. He'd watched the set go up, watched the ramp get assembled, studied the condition of the ground. Nobody noticed because nobody expected it. He'd had his coffee alone, off to one side, not talking to anyone. Loftin was with the first stunt riders at that point, hadn't looked McQueen's way. But McQueen had built the ramp angle in his head, run the speed calculation in his head, the height of the fence, the moisture in the ground, the weight of the bike. He'd measured all of it quietly. He wasn't unprepared. Loftin just didn't know that yet. John Wayne was there that morning too. He'd come to visit the set, not official, personal, 30 years in Hollywood, 142 films, 3 Oscar nominations, Stagecoach, Red River, The Quiet Man, Rio Bravo. Those weren't just films. Those were the pillars of Hollywood history. And Wayne was the man who built them. He'd watched the morning's attempts from a distance. His eyes drifted to Loftin most of the time, because there was a hierarchy on sets, and nobody understood that hierarchy better than Wayne. The stunt coordinator's word was law, not up for debate. Wayne had learned that by living it, and he'd passed it on to others. He looked at McQueen once, then turned back to Loftin. Actors can't do this. His voice was calm, not judging, just stating a fact. That's what stuntmen are for. Loftin nodded. McQueen had heard. Every word. Scene 47. One of the most critical shots in The Great Escape. Hiltz, the character McQueen was playing, was trying to break out of a German POW camp. Final obstacle. A barbed wire fence near the Swiss border. 10 feet high. 40 feet long. Hiltz was going to jump that fence on a motorcycle. Or he wasn't going to make it. And he'd be caught. Director John Sturges had been planning this shot for months. Camera angles locked. Lighting worked out. Contingency plans ready. But the whole scene rested on one thing. That moment when the bike was in the air. If that moment didn't hold, the film didn't hold. It had to feel real. Because it was real. 3 experienced members of the stunt crew had tried that morning. The first braked before the ramp. Speed was off, confidence had broken. He couldn't go through with it. The second made the ramp, but the angle broke apart in the final meter. Hit the top wire with his left shoulder. Went to the hospital. Nothing broken, but he didn't try again that day. The third was the most experienced. Clean jump, controlled landing. But the camera angle hadn't worked. The footage was unusable. Loftin stared at the monitor. 3 failed attempts on the screen. He looked at his crew's faces. Tiredness, frustration, caution. He looked at the equipment. The ramp was wet. The ground had softened further. That's enough for today, he said. We'll come back tomorrow. Try a different angle. And that's when McQueen stood up. I'll do it. Silence. Loftin turned. Slowly. Because turning fast would look like panic. He had that familiar expression on his face. The one a seasoned man gets when he sees young eagerness. He'd seen it plenty in 22 years. Actors sometimes forgot who they were. Too much time in front of a camera, and the line between fiction and reality started to blur. Steve. His voice was flat, steady. There's no special insurance for this scene. No stunt contract for you. If something goes wrong, the whole production stops. Film's over. I don't need insurance. Production won't allow it. I'll talk to production. John Sturges won't allow it. Sturges didn't step forward. Just watched. His face unreadable. Loftin moved 1 step closer. His voice dropped. More direct this time. The second man injured his shoulder today. Professional stuntman. 11 years in the business. 11 years. He stopped. Waited for McQueen's response. McQueen said nothing. Just looked. The ground is worse now. The ramp is wetter. Lights shifting. Winds picking up. McQueen still said nothing. No, Steve. McQueen didn't say a word. He just adjusted his cap and walked toward the motorcycle. Loftin raised his voice. McQueen. But McQueen was already sitting on the bike. The engine fired. There were 47 people on set at that moment. Camera operators, lighting techs, director Sturges and his assistants, set crew, extras, a few visitors, and John Wayne. All of them froze. Nobody moved. Nobody said anything. Loftin took one step toward the motorcycle, then stopped. He stopped because intervening now was more dangerous than the scene itself. Getting close to a running engine, breaking the rider's concentration. At that moment he would be the biggest danger. He stepped back. His hands hung at his sides. He didn't close his eyes. That was his 22-year rule. Whatever happens, you watch. McQueen pulled up to the base of the ramp. Engine at idle. Sound low, steady, solid. He sat still for a few seconds. Didn't move. Didn't say anything. His eyes found the top of the fence. He looked once. Just once. He didn't stare, because staring grows doubt. Doubt cuts speed. Speed gone. The jump doesn't hold. Then he opened the throttle. First 2 meters clean. The bike held in the mud. Unexpectedly solid. Slight slip at the 3rd meter. Left hand held. Corrected. Ramp at the 4th meter. Loftin held his breath. 47 people held their breath. And in the moment before, from the base of the ramp to the full throttle, McQueen had been holding one thing in his mind. Morning ground check. Left side firmer than right. Safer. Ramp angle 38 degrees. 4 degrees steeper than where the second rider came off. But he'd calculated it differently. Bike weight distribution. Rear heavy. Would hold stable in the air. He hadn't told any of this to anyone, because if he had, he wouldn't have been allowed. But the calculations were there, in his head, clear, calm. Not entirely luck, but luck was in there too. McQueen hit the ramp. The engine note shifted, climbed. Then the wheels left the ground. That moment, the fractured moment when the bike hung in the air, when gravity compressed into a single second, the set had no sound. The wind seemed to stop. Loftin was watching through his fingers, hands over his face. Sturges wasn't looking at the camera anymore. John Wayne, 30 years in Hollywood, 142 films, the man who didn't rattle easily, was on his feet. Nobody had noticed him stand up. The rear wheel touched down. Not hard. Controlled. At the right angle, at the calculated point. The bike didn't fishtail. No slide. No pull left or right. McQueen didn't let off the throttle. Rode it out straight. Slowed. Stopped. Killed the engine. Took off his cap. 3 seconds of silence. Then someone clapped. Nobody remembered who it was afterward. But that sound opened a door, and everyone clapped. Loftin lowered his hands from his face. He looked at McQueen. For a long time, there was a strange expression on his face. Not anger, not quite admiration either. Something harder than that. Rarer. The expression a man has the first time he accepts that he was wrong. He didn't say anything. John Wayne came down onto the set. He walked slowly. People stepped aside without noticing they were doing it. McQueen had climbed off the bike, was fixing his hair, deliberately not looking around. Wayne came alongside him, stopped 1 step away, looked at McQueen, held it for a moment and said just 3 words. He's crazy. 3 words. Flat. No commentary, no color, no inflection. But he's crazy coming out of John Wayne's mouth meant something different in Hollywood. Because Wayne had seen a lot in 30 years. Known a lot of people. Stuntmen, actors, directors, producers, drivers, fighters. The number of people he'd called crazy fit on one hand. Because in his language that word wasn't criticism, wasn't complaint. It was closer to confirmation. Given rarely. Not easily earned. It meant, this man doesn't draw his own line. It meant, this man doesn't calculate the cost. It meant, this man didn't hesitate for a single second in front of that fence. Did McQueen hear it? Yes. What did he feel? He never said. Not in any interview. Not in any book. But when he left the set that day, he wore his cap a little more to the side. 3 people noticed. All 3 of them smiled. As the set cleared that evening, Loftin and Wayne stood together for a few minutes. Nobody heard what was said. Or nobody who heard talked about it. But someone from the crew, years later in an interview, described what they saw. Wayne had turned to Loftin and said something quietly. And Loftin hadn't answered. Just nodded. That nod was an acceptance. What he was accepting was obvious. Some people, the more you try to slow them down, the faster they go. Loftin already knew that. Now Wayne did too. Carey Loftin called McQueen over the next morning. The set wasn't built yet. Early, cold, foggy. 2 chairs, a camp table, 2 cups of coffee. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Loftin was looking out the window. McQueen held his coffee but didn't drink it. Then Loftin put a piece of paper on the table. Handwritten technical notes. Ramp angle, speed calculation, landing point, center of gravity, braking distance. You did it right yesterday, he said. His voice was flat, matter of fact. But there was luck in it too. McQueen studied the paper, read it quietly, stopped on one line, then kept going. There always is, he said finally. No. Loftin tapped the table once with a single finger, lightly. Preparation reduces luck. Yesterday you did it without preparation. You did it on luck. McQueen looked up, didn't respond. If you ever do something like that again, come to me first. The silence stretched. If there's a way to do it without getting you killed, we'll find it together. What if there isn't? A small, brief smile crossed Loftin's face. Gone immediately. Then I can't stop you anyway. But at least I can help you do it right. McQueen took the paper, put it in his pocket. He held Loftin's look for a moment. Yesterday, he said, when you were trying to stop me, could you actually have stopped me? Loftin drank his coffee. Thought about it. No, he said finally. Probably not. Did you know that at the time? I knew. Then why did you try? Loftin set his cup down, slowly. Because that's the job. Even when I know I can't stop something, I have to try. Silence. And you knew that. That's why you weren't listening. McQueen didn't say anything, but something moved across his face. Maybe agreement, maybe respect, maybe both. All right, he said. After that, Loftin and McQueen worked differently together. Le Mans, Bullet, the years that followed, Loftin was always there. Every dangerous scene was calculated. Safety was built in. Technical prep was done. But McQueen was never fully reined in. Loftin stopped wanting him to be. Because after that fence scene, Loftin had understood something. Some people exist not to follow rules but to rewrite them. McQueen was one of those people. The Great Escape opened in The most talked about scene was scene 47. The motorcycle over the barbed wire, that fractured airborne moment, the rear wheel touching down. Posters, magazines, film books. Decades later, still that frame. It had become more than one shot from one film. It seemed to define a character. Unbending, refusing the limit, seeing the fence not as a barrier but as a question. But only 47 people knew what happened behind that frame. The ones who saw Loftin cover his face with his hands. The ones who noticed Sturgis step away from the camera. The ones who watched Wayne get to his feet. And the ones who heard 3 words. John Wayne never said anything publicly about McQueen after that day. Never told that story in any interview. But in 1971, at a Hollywood gala, someone asked Wayne, in your opinion, who's the greatest actor of this generation? Wayne thought for a few seconds, then said, McQueen. Because he doesn't just play it, he lives it. The journalist didn't fully understand what that meant. But anyone who'd been on that set in 1963, they would have understood immediately. Some things don't make it into the frame, but those are the ones that stay. The Great Escape received 8 Oscar nominations that year. McQueen wasn't on the list. The Academy had missed him, or chosen not to see him, but audiences didn't forget. In polls, in reviews, in the memory of the people who watched, one scene kept coming back to the top. Scene 47. That jump, and that face, capped still, unsurprised by anything. The Academy hadn't nominated him, but John Wayne had said he's crazy. Sometimes that carries more weight. Has anyone in your life ever told you that you can't do something? Are you still carrying that voice inside you, or did you leave it behind? Drop it in the comments. This story is inspired by real legends and Hollywood storytelling traditions. Some dialogue and scenes have been created for dramatic purposes.